President of the Republic of the Gambia. As you know, last week, the President, in exercising his constitutional rights, did effect some cabinet changes. The Foreign Affairs Minister, Honorable Ousainou Darboe, has been redeployed as the Vice President of the Republic of the Gambia. And it's a great opportunity for us to talk to him. What is going to change? Is this good for his political career? And there have been so many rumors about his appointment. So it's a great honor to talk to Honorable Darboe. Honorable, welcome to Kerr Fatou, always our constant guest on Kerr Fatou. And thank you again for hosting us.
It's always a great pleasure to be with you.
Wow.
Yeah.
We are talking to Honorable Darboe. This change, a lot of people say, is very risky for him as a politician. Others say it's a great move. And I think it's going to be interesting to hear his own side of the story. Tonight, that's the subject of discussion.
Good evening, viewers, and I would start by saying congratulations for your new appointment. Being a Vice President of the Republic of the Gambia is indeed a great achievement. As Fatou has said, and everyone has said, some people have echoed that this is a great move. Some have said the President has done this to neutralize the leader of the UDP, who is Honorable Ousainou Darboe. Some people have said, okay, they're still doing their tactical alliance. So there's a lot of speculations going on. There's a lot of assumptions that are ongoing. But again, since we have you here, we are definitely sure that all our concerns and our questions would be answered. So welcome to Kerr Fatou again.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure. We'll try as much as possible to answer your questions.
Thank you very much, Oli. Interesting discussion ahead. Honorable Darboe, within the 16 months you've been in Foreign Affairs and then to OVP now last week, so many people said this is a great move. Others say there's no point actually. You've been so powerful. You were next to nobody in this cabinet. Did you initiate this move to be the Vice President of the country?
First of all, let me debunk the notion that I'm powerful. I'm not powerful. Even the President's powers are circumscribed by the Constitution. So I'm not powerful. And let me say that I was equal to all the ministers in the cabinet. I was not, in fact, a primus inter pares. I was equal with them in every aspect. And the portfolio that I handled exposed me to the world. And I did try to do my best to rebrand Gambia, to ensure that our tarnished image is polished, that our isolationist attitude was done away with, so that we got into the fold of the international community. And the President had confidence in me and entrusted the portfolio to me. Maybe I have not measured up to his expectations, but I've tried to do my best. The issue of being powerful, those are in the imagination of our detractors. And we will not, of course, pay any heed to those distracting statements and actions. We will remain focused, knowing that whoever is appointed a minister is done so solely at the discretion of the President. And I must tell you that I was away in Nouakchott.
Yeah.
When
did you know about you were did you know about the appointment? A lot of people said, oh, he cooked everything and just went to Mauritania.
I did not know anything about it. Incidentally, it was the protocol of my protocol, Mr. Jobate, who broke the news to me, because I think the Secretary General called him and told him this news. He broke the news to me, and I was kind of flabbergasted. I said, but why? No? And I was told that the Secretary General was going to call me in a couple of minutes. And after about 45 minutes or so, the Secretary General called and said that the President has decided to appoint me as Vice President and Minister for Women's Affairs.
What was your immediate reaction?
My immediate reaction was that, wow, why me? That was my immediate reaction. And the ambassador in Addis, Mr. Jack, was around. He was Suleiman Jack. He was around. Yes, we were in school together. So among the players together, he was the first I break the news to. And then also Justice Nasisel Salawada. I told them that this is what has happened, that I have been elevated to the position of vice presidency. And after a while, it sank in me, and I was all thankful to God, the Almighty, for giving me the chance to serve under President Adama Barrow in an elevated capacity. Yes, so I mean, but Gambia people talk a lot, So so this is something that they had in their imagination, and I had not the slightest idea that I would be appointed vice president.
I just wanted to ask, so basically you were appointed, but you didn't have an option of accepting it or not, so you were just called to be informed that you've now been appointed the vice president. From my little knowledge, I'm thinking, before you appoint somebody, don't you have a discussion about it, and then have a thorough discussion, the person accepts, and then they take up the position? But it seems like
you're right. I mean, yes, there could be, but I cannot imagine who would be called upon to be appointed vice president and say, look, I don't want it. I can't imagine it. In the first place, the person appointing you, is doing so on the basis of confidence. And I think it will be out of place, when a person is called upon to serve your nation in any capacity. It will be out of place for you to say, like, I'm declining it, I'm not accepting it. I mean, there would be such situations, for instance, if on account of your ill health, you don't think you can perform well in that capacity, then you can politely, decline, and certainly President Adama Barrow, it's a known fact that he was a member of the United Democratic Party, and certainly you would expect me in any capacity to stand by him, help him deliver on his agenda.
That brings me to my next question. A lot of when Gambians complain that this government is not living up to their expectations, a lot of UDP supporters will say, well, it's a coalition government. But with you as the vice president, can you admit that this is, even though there are still some coalition members in cabinet, would you admit that this is a UDP government, Your Excellency?
Why is it a UDP government? Because I'm vice president?
Because there are more UDP members in cabinet than any other coalition members. In fact, key members of the coalition have been relieved of their duties. So nobody sees this as a coalition anymore. Everybody says this is a UDP government. Okay,
well, very well. You see, those who say that this is no longer a coalition government, it's UDP government, they fail to realize that there was not a coalition between individuals. The coalition is between parties. I can be out of cabinet, and yet the coalition government is still on, because it is UDP, it's not Ousainou Darboe. Nor is it any individual that got together and coalesced. It is the parties that coalesced. You've never heard of coalition between individuals, a coalition between parties. So I think that is really, I don't know what to say. It's really very weak, statement, and it's just a way not to really try to deflect, people's attention from the real things. I mean, if you talk that the coalition, significant members or leading members of the coalitions are out of the cabinet. Now, yes. Are their parties out of cabinet? Their parties are still in the cabinet. But in fact, one member's party, when he was removed, somebody else was appointed from PPP. And you have James Gomez PPP. So, I mean, it is parties, not individuals. And I think Gambian people should understand that it is not a coalition of individuals. It is a coalition of parties. And nobody should go on a misinformation drive to say that the coalition, has broken away. There's no coalition. I think people should really debunk that notion, and really nobody should really propel that around, for whatever reason.
I think you were very right when you said the coalition is between parties and not individuals. But then that will bring me to the case of GMC, because I don't believe that they still have a party member in cabinet. So if the coalition was between parties. The president, I think, has the right to say, I cannot work with this individual, yes. But then does that not mean that that individual should bring somebody from their party to still represent them as part of the coalition? And in the case of GMC, I don't think we've seen that happening.
And again, one is putting the coalitions, membership of the coalition on as far as positions are concerned, cabinet positions are concerned. GMC, absence from the cabinet doesn't mean that, it's not part of the coalition. My party has publicly said that he is supports the coalition, and it's part of, because he understands what coalition, that, is not holding positions in the cabinet or in government that makes one a member of the coalition. After all, we know that Darboe is a very significant member of the coalition. From the beginning, they were not in cabinet. Yet nobody saying anything about that, except yesterday, when maybe one or two people have existed in cabinet, and then they are saying that cabinet, the coalition has broken. When Darboe was not in the cabinet, why we are not saying that there is no coalition government? Wow. I cannot understand this argument.
Because it was Darboe who
opted out.
But it's not a question of being opt-in or not opt-in. It's a question of why is it that no one has stated. Now, because Darboe is not in the cabinet, there's no coalition government. That's the point I'm making. It's not whether Darboe opted or not opted. Yeah. So I just want to ask that.
So you want to maintain that it's still a coalition government?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Even without all the
absolutely,
key members?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely.
Going forward, Your Excellency, Gambians have been very impatient with this government. A lot of people said things have not been working. What will your vice presidency bring to the table to make things better for the ordinary Gambian?
Well, my vice presidency will continue from where the former vice president left. And one should not assume that because things, quote, because people are impatient, nothing was happening, that's why I'm brought in as vice president. I think the former vice president has done a lot.
But why the reshuffle then? If she has done so well, why change her? A key member of the coalition, why was the reshuffle then?
Yeah. I mean, there could be, the government or the president is not bound to even keep any of us in cabinet. They're not bound to keep any of us in cabinet. Yeah. But what I'm doing, I have to be honest and pay tribute
to her,
to the former vice president. And we are taking off from where she left. You see, the Gambian people felt that there's a magic wand. Let's say, let it be and it's done. Yeah? And, the process is gradual. And I think this government has done a lot. In the first place, one of the fundamental things is your freedom, your ability to go out and say anything. Look, in Jammeh's time, who would come out and say, Darboe? No, tell me.
No one, definitely.
Isn't that an achievement?
Of course.
At least the liberties that the people enjoy, I think, is the greatest achievement.
What?
Coupled, of course, the fact that, the increasing changes, in some of the, in the social sector. These things, because there are little here and there, but the cumulative effect is what will be seen. You have a small improvement there, a small improvement there, all put together, cumulatively make the whole. After all, when at the time we are coming in, electricity was a problem. But now at least there is some measure of predictability. There is some measure of availability. But they won't say that. In fact, you had the president when he met the business community. Said, look, we did, this reduction in taxes, not for your benefit, but for the benefit of the common people. So it should trickle down. But people are not talking about that. We had a terrible, economy. Now we are picking up. The economists know this, and they are all applauding the government. It is the seriousness of the government that has led to the international community in pledging 1.7 billion. Before we went to that conference, I had a chat with a very senior diplomat, and I said, look, our funding gap is about 600. It's about 600. No, we're expecting 1.2 billion. I said, well, I think if you have 0.5 billion, you'll be happy.
Yeah.
Half a billion.
And you came back.
And we came back triple that amount.
Yeah.
But it is the seriousness of the government that has led to that. The hard work put into that document and its manner of presentation. And of course, apart from that, there are other drives to make this economy work. Look, we have, because of the environment created by this government, cotton production is going to start in Upper River. Varieties of cotton being brought in. Cotton production is going to start in Upper River, and the cotton ginnery in Basse is being maintenance and put at work. These are things that are happening. You see, we are not a government that go to television and say, "Aliaje nganyinnineke, benyinnineke." No. We'll do all things quietly because that is the mandate given to us. We don't have to go to the Gambian people, pound our chest and say, this is what we are doing, we are going to do it. Because that's what we have in mind. Why should we go and be blowing our trumpets? So we are not doing that. We could do that too, but we are not doing that. And let them go on saying that we have not done anything. Well, we feel convinced that we have done something, and the ordinary, reasonable person feel that they have done something. What is the interest rate at the banks now? When we are taking over, it was more than 25%. Now it's gone down to about 13%.
Yes.
What does that show? It shows that the economy is buoyant. The economy has picked up and is working well. But these are things that they wouldn't talk about, and of course I can understand, and of course they're impatient.
Because expectations were high, Your Excellency. When you took over, Gambians were yearning for a lean government. As the head of the government, Vice President technically is the head of the cabinet. And there's been a lot of confusion between cabinet ministers, which frustrate a lot of people. Going forward, is this going to be a thing of the past? One cabinet minister says this, another says a different thing. That doesn't help the government.
I don't understand.
No, sometimes you see one cabinet minister does something and the other minister comes with a letter refuting, or one says this, another says that. That has been a thing of the past. Is there not been a coordination among cabinet? Are you meeting frequently? Why is something like that? Is this going to be a thing of the past?
As far as I know, cabinet meets every Thursday.
So why were you having those kind of issues?
I cannot recall where ministers have been speaking at cross purpose or have been contradicting each other. I can give one example where the former finance minister was allegedly had issued a contract to obviously the finance ministry issued a contract to one company, and the former information minister brings out a letter saying he was not in the loop. Those kind of issues, when those things go out to the public, it affects our confidence in our public officials. That is just one of them. I'm not sure if the finance minister issued any, and I'm not sure if the finance minister issued any contract. I think it was the letter we saw that came from the communication.
And
I'm not sure if the finance minister ever issued any contract. I mean, as far as I know, contracts. Land ministries, really discuss the issues of awarding contracts, and invariably they do come to cabinet, and cabinet express a view on it, what views those are, is left to cabinet, But I do not think that the ministers have been issuing, contradictory statements, on issues. I cannot really call that. But then, if it does happen, and one feels that these are contradictory statements, I think it would depend on how the individuals who are receiving the statements, how they interpret it. Because your interpretation of my statement would be different from
Your Excellency, you're bringing law into
I'm not bringing any law.
Don't bring law into this.
I'm not bringing any law. But you are a communicator. You know. When you impart, when you communicate, the receiver, is what the receiver makes of your statement. Yeah. You know that very well. Yes. So I'm not being loyal at all.
You're being a lawyer here.
Yes, you've mentioned about the economy, which I believe we need to applaud the government for that. But there's a great outcry in terms of health and education. It just seems, to me, it's one of the most areas that I think and I believe government should prioritize. But it's just, especially our health system, it just seems to be put on the side, under the carpet. I mean, again, you said you would not beat your chest and say we've done this. So it's one of those things that you're doing so well and you're not beating your chest and we don't know about it. So maybe you can tell us more about it. But I have another question that I want to ask. People are really talking about great nepotism that is happening in the government and party affiliation. People believe that when you were in foreign affairs, most of the positions went to UDP supporters. People believe that other cabinet members too, the appointments that they were doing or people that they were working with, there's a great nepotism going on. So now, you being the vice president, what assurance can you give the Gambian people that that is not the case, or if it is the case, you definitely have policies and structures to ensure that every Gambian, regardless of your party affiliation or your tribe, your gender, or who you're related to, if you are qualified, there's a job waiting there for you. All you need to do is go through the proper channels, apply, and get the position.
Again, it is views of people, opinions. And of course, you have made specific reference to the Minister of Foreign Affairs. There have been appointments. And let me say, in the first place, any government would appoint as its representatives abroad those people in whom it has confidence that they will pursue and promote its foreign policy agenda. Why do you put in someone as your representative abroad when you cannot rely on the person to promote your foreign policy agenda? Why do you have to do that? But let me say, most importantly, as far as the foreign affairs community is concerned, I will give you names of the ambassadors. Now, when we came in, Ambassador Tenemba was in Brussels. And I do not have political affiliation.
Yeah.
And I said, because I know of her competence, and I said we should retain her. Ambassador Tangara, everybody's crying, he's APRC and that. But I didn't care whether he was APRC. I was concerned about ability to deliver, competence. And I recommended the president that we should retain him. What is nepotic? Well, they won't tell you that. Ambassador Bojang in South Africa, he was Speaker of the National Assembly. Everybody knows him to be APRC. Why are they not saying that?
I tell you about Ambassador Bojang.
No. It's the nepotism that they are saying. You see, I didn't need Fonyi to appoint. I didn't need Ambassador Bojang in order to make any inroads into Fonyi's. I was gradually, making inroads into Fonyi. We believe that this must be a government of all Gambians. And the Jolas, I say, if I looked at that, we don't have a Jola in any position of prominence. So we should have Ambassador Bojang. And, is that nepotic? He's APRC. Now, Ambassador High Commissioner Blaine in UK, I don't know his political affiliation. I know his competence. He worked at the UNDP, resident coordinator, I believe, in Liberia, and he served in UK as in the High Commission, and he was a fine diplomat. Yeah. Now, Ambassador Tal in Abuja, of course, it's known that he's UDP, but then, do I dispense with the service of a competent person because he belongs to UDP? Tell me who is more competent than Ambassador Tal. No, I challenge all those people. Who is more competent than him? What is nepotic about that? Ambassador Jack, an accomplished diplomat. What is nepotic about that? Now, let them tell me. If you show me that they're incompetent and they have had their appointments because of their membership of the UDP, then you'll have a case. Well, I will let them go on with that, but I challenge them.
In fact, a lot of things that people also criticize you and the president for is recycling former Jammeh officials. For example, during this cabinet reshuffle, we have seen key members of the former regime. I personally have said, if they're competent, if they have not involved in gross human rights abuses, if they had not been corrupted or being corrupt or even named in serious financial allegations, every Gambian should be given chances. But a majority of Gambians, including your supporters, say, why do we have to recycle these people when we have other competent Gambians? Are they the only ones qualified for these jobs when you can choose from other Gambians? You have been heavily criticized. The president has been heavily criticized for these appointments.
The president must have considered a lot. After all, the president knows who Tangara is. He knows who Mr. Njai is. In fact, these allegations, let's be quite frank.
Yeah, it's about these two.
It's just about these two.
Yes.
The allegations. He knows who they are. And he must have very good reason for really appointing them as ministers. Now, finance minister, the main allegation against him is that he was in the former regime who held various positions and so forth and so on. And I'll be loyally here. Ivy said, has he, in this period, done things for his own personal benefit? Has he squandered the finances of this country for his own personal benefit? Now, that's how I approach it. But the president has good reason for appointing them, and I will not be the one to question his judgment on that, as I think it should not be for you, Fatou, to question his judgment for appointing me as vice president.
Your Excellency, the reason a lot of people are saying Honorable Mamburi Njai has been a victim like so many other Gambians himself. We have seen he's one of the ministers who has suffered more than any other person. He's been sent to jail several times. But what people are worried about, a lot of people said, why do we have the commission? The commission is finding out mismanagement and things that happened in the former government. And this particular minister has been saying, going back and forth, and the commission is not even concluded, Your Excellency.
Why don't you wait?
But they said, that's what people are saying, the commission is concluded. It's concluding in next month. Why would you want to put him in cabinet?
Why don't you wait and see?
But why don't you guys wait until the commission is over?
Why don't you wait until the commission? To safeguard the integrity
of the commission, Your Excellency.
How does it affect the integrity of the commission? And this is where I disagree with people.
Yeah.
Because when you say compromising the integrity of the commission, you are indirectly saying that, in fact, these members of the commission, are themselves going to react in making their recommendations. They're going to react to decisions taken by the president on issues, even before they present their recommendations. Those are not the people. I am not the chairman of that commission. They will not be influenced by any actions of the executive taken prior to them arriving at their conclusions. And I want to say that, whoever, let's say, if Madam X is holding ministerial position, and during the course of some hearings in the commission, statements are made, or she gives evidence on certain issues. Would that be sufficient for her to be relieved of her position as a cabinet minister? Yeah? But if at the end of the sittings of the commission finds the person deficient, then it now behoves the president to remove the person from cabinet. Yeah. But before then, I mean, you do not assume the person to have done
wrongfully
to have committed, quote unquote, any offense. That is how I approach it. My reasoning might be different from reasoning of other people, and I think that is how the difference in the way we view, the differences in the way we view things. Yeah.
But Your Excellency, the reshuffle again, only 2 women have been asked of. Like, this government is not seen to be gender sensitive, Your Excellency. 2 women out of the cabinet, and again, all of us, including me, why will Honorable Darboe be the Women's Affairs Minister? Why don't you separate? Why don't you advise the president to separate this ministry and give it to a woman?
Let me tell you why Mr. Darboe is Women's Affairs Minister. Mr. Darboe is very sympathetic to women's cause. There's absolutely no doubt about that. Absolutely no doubt.
Honorable, what a lot of feminists and people say.
But then again, yes, I am an advocate of women being at the center of decision making. Yeah. I'm a very committed advocate of that, But again, the prerogative of the president to appoint, is not circumscribed by consideration of sex. It's not circumscribed by consideration of sex. Yeah. Maybe what the women should now do, with the support of maybe some of us, is to make recommendations to the Constitutional Review Commission that in appointing to
key government positions,
this yes, and a certain percentage be allocated to women. Maybe that should happen.
But he's just telling us that this government is not really gender sensitive, and the work that activists, when we have like the director of press, who is a gender activist, the minister of health, who is an advocate for gender activism, are in this government, and yet we are not able to get women representative in the cabinet, Your Excellency. That is something that a lot of us women are not happy with. I mean, when it comes to women's affairs,
I don't think you represent. You sit in cabinet to represent any section, please.
Okay.
I don't think you just sit in cabinet to represent any particular interest. So to say that there is no women to represent women's interests, I think that is absolutely that is absolutely fallacious, because you are not there to represent. Madam, let me just learn. You are not there to represent the interests of the women. You are there to represent the interests of the nation. Yeah. And that includes the interests of women. And of course, it's just not that, or it cannot only be true that only female members of the cabinet will advocate for women's interests. That cannot be true.
I agree.
That cannot be true at all.
I agree with that. We agree with that. But when it comes to
and then again, and then because I say, look, it boils down to the same thing. Why do I ask the president, why have you not appointed a woman?
Your Excellency, what we say, when you talk about women's experience, you want to be in their position to know. For example, if you're talking about paid leave for women, if you're talking about women's body, it has to be a woman to tell you some of those experiences. That's where people are worried about.
I agree. That's a view.
Yeah.
But look, I know what it takes. Having been a married man myself for several years,
and having female children,
and have female children, I know, what it takes women, when they're pregnant, when they're delivered, what they go through, So really, I may not physically be going through it, but I see it, and I know, how much. What they go through. So really, for consideration, or for me to be able to advocate for them, or for any other person to be able to advocate for them, I don't think it should be. I don't think it should be difficult. And I want to tell you that I don't want to say women's affairs. If I was teasing somebody, I say why women's affairs? But you know, I have been an advocate, you know, of women's position. I have always been an advocate that women should be in decision-making positions, and will continue with that within the framework of the policies of the government for promoting, gender parity, you know, in our institutions. Yeah.
I agree with you 100% on that, because sitting on the position, you don't have to be a man or a woman. But then now we just going back a little bit. Okay, finance is one of the most important sectors because it deals with our economy. When we look at local government and lands, that's the community. So you're dealing with pretty much everybody. Then we look at foreign affairs. Foreign affairs is very key in a government. And people have noticed and have mentioned that all these key positions were being held by UDP. But now you are out of foreign affairs, Amadou Sane is out of finance, and Mr. Diba is out of local government and lands. And then that's why I would come back to where I started when they said your appointment is to neutralize you. So what is your take on that for the President Adama Barrow to take out His Excellency these key positions from UDP and give you other positions which are, of course, relevant and important, but would that not affect you, the party UDP, and how do you take that?
Well, I don't know how it will affect the UDP. I'm yet to be told how this is going to affect UDP, really. Let the analysts, the political analysts, those who say they are the experts, you know, on politics, let them tell me. But as far as I'm concerned, you know, it's not having any effect of neutralizing me. But neutralize me for what? You neutralize someone who is in competition with you.
Neutralizing you?
Your presidency?
No, presidency. Am I in competition for anybody for the presidency?
Are you a step closer to the presidency?
Let me what I ask, am I in competition with anybody for the presidency for me to be neutralized? I'm not in competition with anybody for the presidency. I'm not eager to be president of this country. Why should people be talking about an event of 2021 in 2018?
2021?
You know, in 2018. Whatever you know, in the difficult circumstances that we have come from, should we not be addressing those issues and forget about this issue of who will be president in 2021? You know? And again, you know, I say, no, who am I in competition with anybody? Who is in competition with me to be president, for me to be neutralized? If you're talking of really positions, look, I think the Minister of Agriculture is quite an important ministry. You know, you are dealing with the Gambians, with my mother, with my uncles, who go to the furrows and to the farmlands, you know, working hard. These are the people you are dealing with. The majority of the Gambians, from Bakau, with their narcos, all the way to Koina, you know, in their rice and coos fields. You know, you decide, and they will be working hard to ensure that there is an improvement in the living standards of these people, average or the ordinary Gambians. What is important about local chiefs and land?
Land is very important.
Well, land is important, but of course you must realize also that, you know, you go to Lamen, they have their land. The Minister of Local Government cannot do anything about that. They have their land. You go to Bansan, we have our land. Government can only come in when the land is needed for public purposes. Yes, and then we'll be adequately, we'll be compensated. You know? So, but all this issue of really this high-profile ministry, that's a high-profile ministry, and Mr. X has been moved there, Mr. Y. All ministries are important. There is no single ministry that has greater importance than other, except the presidency, because the presidency is the alpha and omega. That's the one. Yeah. So with that, you know, whether you are in the Ministry of Health, you know, again, you know, whoever is in the Ministry of Health, you're really dealing with a very important sector of the community. And really, You cannot downgrade it, because it is a Minister of Health. Yeah? I think it's wrong. But I want the political analyst to tell me how we have been neutralized and what competition is there.
When a lot of people say, when you were Foreign Affairs Minister, you did a lot of campaigning. You go crisscrossing the country to seeking votes.
No,
As the Vice President, you should be very neutral. You should not be campaigning, Your Excellency. That is the thing. You have to sit in this office.
Let me tell you one thing.
Are you going to be campaigning when it's time to go to campaign?
Let me tell you one thing.
Yeah, because you use your weekends a lot campaigning.
I'm leader of a political party, and until at such time that my party remove me as its leader, I'll continue to perform my political. Who says that as Vice President I cannot do my political activities? Who says so? After all, when I went on campaign, I took leave, and I'm still entitled to the remainder of my leave, of my earned leave. So
that doesn't stop you from.
Who says so?
Wow.
Who says so? I'm a politician. I'm leader of a political party. And my appointment doesn't say that I cannot go embark on my political activities. After all, I think I'm in this coveted position because of political activities.
Wow. Your Excellency, again, on the reshuffle, youth. The youth have been the driving force for this change, Your Excellency. On that fateful day when you went out to demand for the body of Solo Sandeng, when you were arrested, even though you were in jail, it was the Gambian youth and women who were out every single day to show solidarity personally to you and your party to effect this change. When the impasse happened, the youth wanted to go out and take the presidency away from the former government because they felt that they empowered their own president. They voted in a new president. They were front center of this change. And today, the youth are feeling like this presidency doesn't really give a lot of attention to them. We have not seen any youth in this cabinet. The president appointed youth advisors. And Your Excellency, the noise out there is, you have abandoned us, the youth. It's just you people. Are you going to sustain that when it comes 2021, as you claim 2021, even though people say it's 2019? But the youth, Your Excellency, the youth. And, honestly, we have competent youth in this country.
We appreciate. I personally appreciate the enormous support that I received, particularly from the youth of the United Democratic Party, during those trying moments, from 14th of April up to the 5th of December, 2016. I'm very grateful to them, and we acknowledge their contribution, just as we acknowledge the contribution of all other sections of the society. And obviously, we cannot be, and we are not oblivious to their immense contribution. When you talk of the youths feeling that, quote unquote, let me use my own words, feeling abandoned, it's because the way you see it and the way maybe Oli also sees it, maybe different from the way the other gentleman sees it. Now, I know as a fact that schemes have been put in place for youth to benefit from. We know of the YEP. Yeah, we know of that. We also see how our Minister of Tourism has marketed the Gambia in the past months. And I want to publicly congratulate him for having been chosen as the Africa's Personality of the Year.
Yes.
And that is on account of the immense contribution he has done to tourism development, not only in Gambia, but also in Africa.
Yeah.
Which I think is really a great achievement on the side of this government. And of course, the number of tourists has increased and is going to increase. and that you have the tourist season going on for 12 months of the year. And you know that in this industry, it's not the 50, 60-year-olds that get employment in these places.
Yeah.
It is the younger people, those we describe as youths. Yeah. So we are trying to do things, but in a well-ordered way. And of course, I can understand, in fact, when you talk, sometimes when you talk of the plight of the youth, it's mainly those who have gone out the back way and the back way returnees. And this is why, the YEP has been put in place to cater for those people, And I want to believe that youths are now being convinced that getting involved in the country's main industry, agriculture, is paying and is capable of paying better than a government job. And I can assure you that up country, you go to the Cairns, you find aquaculture being carried on by the youth there. In other parts of the country, youth mobilizing themselves to have their own farms. Yeah. So, but the issue of whether a youth should be in
giving
cabinet.
a role model. When Malaysia recently appointed a 25-year-old into cabinet,
Absolutely.
That is laudable.
Absolutely.
That is something other young people will look up to and say, hey,
Absolutely.
if this only can sit in cabinet and
Absolutely.
represent me,
Absolutely.
I can also be better than that.
Absolutely.
That's what people do to encourage young people. And we have not seen that in cabinet. Even the youth advisor to the president, Your Excellency.
Yeah.
All of these things, we have no issue appointing somebody older as a youth advisor. But if you have two advisors, let one be a younger person to give you what we talk about in the bantabas, when we sit at the booths, what we discuss about. Because when older people, they don't sit with us on those areas. So they don't know some of the things youth go through. So the generations have changed.
And
it would be better to have somebody closer to the presidency who can advise him proper.
I know that there may be generational gap.
Yes.
Between what you call the youth advisor and the youth advisor and the youth. This is just advisor to the president. But you do have the National Youth Council, which is advisor to the government, and is headed by a very dynamic, articulate young person, and whose views are never discarded by government, because you find that statutorily, by act of National Assembly, he is performing his functions as head of the National Youth Council. It will of course be out of place if you appoint me as the secretary or chairman of the National Youth Council.
Of course,
that will be very much out of place. But this is an advisor, and it's advisor to the president. So just as I could have you as advisor on media issues, and just I listen to you, and that maybe I don't even, but that does not prevent or stop the government appointed media person, which covers all government departments, to really do the job for me here. So I appreciate the fact that maybe they will say, oh yes, the youth advisor, and I can go to and then say, look, tonight where are we going to meet? Are we going to meet in Disney? Is it, how do you call the place? Is it? No, the nightclub. Yeah. Destiny. Are we going to meet at Destiny here, or where are we going to? Which joint are we going to meet? I can understand. Yes, I mean they relate well, but then it does not take away the functions from the National Youth Council.
And I think sports is also something that they need to really look into and tap into.
The budget for the sports ministry. Yes.
Okay, I know some of the questions the sports minister would be the one who would be in a better position to answer.
Okay.
But sports in Gambia is just, it's just a child's play. Because I'm talking from personal experience, because I've represented the Gambia to play tennis. And I had no support, I had no acknowledgement, nothing. It was just me and the tennis association. I went and I came back, and that's it. And we have a lot of young people with talent that is not being nurtured. So definitely the government we had before, I think have done quite well, especially in football. But now we expected this government to really, really, really support the young people, especially even in sports.
Well, yes, the Minister of Sports will be the appropriate person to maybe not answer, but maybe to disclose certain issues relating to the financing of sports in this country. And this government takes sport very seriously. There are members of the cabinet who are very closely associated with sports of various various facets. You have those who are closely associated with football, those closely associated with wrestling, and so forth. And we all feel very passionately about the state of sports in this country, particularly football. And we all realize that it is expensive, and really having regard to the budgetary situation in the country, means some other means have to be devised in order to fund the activities of this sporting association. But I think it will be appropriate for the Minister of Sports, to really, go into details. But what I want to say is that it is a matter that has attracted the urgent attention of the government, and it has been discussed at a very high level, and steps have been taken, not to ensure that we do not only provide the funds to enable you go to Sierra Leone and take part, in competitions there, but also to be able to train you properly, so that you become an accomplished sports person.
Honourable Minister, a lot of people are yearning for a lean government. The OP, that the Office of the President that hosts OVP, is bloated. Are we draining the swamps to bring order to OVP and OP? Are we?
Well, let me say now, I'm here just three days. I'm here just 3 days. I've come over from foreign, so I have to see what the staffing situation is like here. But let me tell you that the president's budget has been reduced by 75%.
I want to come there. The president's budget has been reduced by 75%. It's 1/4. The National Assembly we were the National Assembly.
Yeah.
Just the first quarter, the presidency has almost exhausted their budget.
Well, yes, but then,
so what happens if the presidency has exhausted their budget and it's not even half the year? What happens?
If the president's budget is exhausted, because that would have taught us a lesson. Because just thought like, look, I think the budget, here is a lot, so we have to reduce. Because
OVP.
That's the office of office of the president. No, office of the president. Because a lot of things, expenditures, we are really done on matters that you can do away with. And that informed the president to insist that the budget in his office should be reduced, at least especially the household should be reduced by 75%, which nobody is talking about.
Of course we did. We applauded the government for that.
We
applauded the government. We said for the first time. We said for the first time. That's a great initiative. But what we are saying is...
certainly it's going to be a tradition.
Okay.
It's going to be a tradition. Now, you say now it has been halfway through.
First quarter.
First 3
months.
No, that is going to teach us a lesson. When we reduce the budget, one that is allocated.
Should we strictly abide by the budget?
And that going to judiciously manage it, so that we it's not exhausted before the next financial year. It's a learning process. It's a learning process.
Still then what happens, because the presidency cannot go without a budget. So once they exhaust their budget, do we go to Parliament and say approve for more money? Or it's a learning point, yes. But how would you mitigate the
Well, we'll rely on the advice of the Minister of Finance.
Okay, yes, the Minister of Finance. Your Excellency, your predecessor, Honorable Fatoumata Jallow Tambajang, our dear mother, who is a friend, a close person to you as a person and also as a politician, was relieved of his duties. Do you know the reason for his removal? And if you know or if you don't know, this government, anytime they dismiss somebody, they said they've been redeployed to the Foreign Service. So is this the new norm for this government? Instead of saying you are dismissed, we'll say you are redeployed. That happened in Maifati's case. It happened at the former CDS, and now the foreign minister, the vice president. Is that the new norm? Is that the new way of saying you are fired? You have been redeployed to Foreign Service, Your Excellency?
Well, the first part of your question, I do not know the reason.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to find out the reason. I think if anyone should find the reason, maybe it should be the Madam Tambajang. Yes, I don't because why should I be inquisitive? You know, poking my nose into something that I should not. I mean, that will be at the height of indiscretion. Yeah? Now, whether it is a norm that when you are being dismissed, you know, you just redeploy to the Foreign Service.
At least as we have seen the case of Maifat.
I don't think. After all, you know, Madam Tambajang was not the only person who was relieved of her position in the cabinet. There was another minister relieved of position in the cabinet, but he's not deployed. So it's not a question of using redeployment to the Foreign Service or to any other service, you know, as a cover for dismissal or relief, not dismissal, of being relieved of his position. So I mean, one is thought that, you know, that's where you probably have, you know, you want to again, you know, give an opportunity to serve your government in another capacity and promote the welfare of the citizens. It is not unusual for cabinet ministers to be appointed as ambassadors. It's not unusual. It happens. It happens throughout the world.
Yeah.
Gambia, I mean, so it's not something that is new. It happens throughout the world. You know. So and of course, it depends on the individual whether or not you want to accept. You want to accept the offer of serving in the diplomatic service or not. You know, and we will look forward to really the former vice president accepting, you know, redeployment into the foreign and diplomatic service. We're looking forward to that. Now, of course, for Mr. Fati, I know that, I mean, I think his letter did say that he was being redeployed to the Foreign Service, but then I'm not sure, you know, whether he wants to avail himself of the opportunity to do so or not, you know. But I can assure you that it's not a means of, I mean, politely dismissing you and saying that you are deployed to the Foreign Service. Not a polite dismissal, I mean, or a polite way of relieving one of your position.
There are rumors that there are more cabinet firing coming. Is it true?
I don't know.
So many more firing.
I don't know.
You don't know?
I don't know.
And yeah, so Fatoumata mentioned your relationship with Honorable Fatoumata Tambajang, and I hope you now taking up her position, would that not affect your relationship? Because, I mean, a lot of people have said this, that why would Honorable Darboe take this position when you, on so many different mediums, you've talked about your relationship with her as a friend, you talked about your relationship with her as, you know, politically and everything. So for her to be relieved and you take up her position, because there's a lot of assumption that when you're relieved of your position, it's because you're not up to expectation, to what you're not doing as much as what was expected of you. So for that person to be relieved and you being in that kind of capacity and relationship with her, taking up the position, how do you feel as a person?
Well, let me say that in the cabinet, Madam Tambajang is the person I have the closest personal relationship, I mean, dates back, 40 years ago, and I believe that relationship will continue until one of us dies. I have absolutely no doubt about that. Now, how I feel for taking the position, I don't think there is nothing that is immoral. I don't want to talk about law, but I don't think there is nothing immoral for me to really succeed her as vice president. And in fact, as this say, that I want to continue where she left.
Yes.
So that build on what she has started as Minister for Women's Affairs as well as Vice President.
What changes can you effect as Vice President?
This is my third day here, so I don't want to say that these are going to be the changes when I have not yet have a feel of the office of the Vice Presidency as well as the Minister of Women's Affairs. It is when I have a feel of it that if there is a change. But one thing that I know is that, and I know that Madam Tambajang has been doing work here, and I have had various consultations with her. So as far as policy matters concerned, I cannot think of changes. I don't envision any. But then I have to know.
Governance is continuity.
Yeah, governance continuity. I just have to know, what is around before I take any decision, before any decision can be taken, and even where a decision is taken, I'll consult with the president before really affecting anything.
A lot of people, including the leader of the GDC, Honorable Mamakane, called your appointment unconstitutional. He said you have been convicted, and then says your appointment is unconstitutional. What's your reaction to those? This has been a headline since the day of your appointment.
Well, let me say, those who think that my appointment is unconstitutional, they have the Supreme Court to go to. When I believe that the government has acted in a way that runs contrary to the Constitution, I go to the court and challenge it. I have challenged the Gambia administration here, for they are violating the provisions of the court. In my view, they have violated the provisions of the court. So I go to court and I challenge them, whether it affects the appointment of an IEC member, judges, and other things. I have done so. But those people who say so, they're just exposing their own ignorance. Honestly. And I'm disappointed that people who think they want to be president of this country do not even know the Constitution. It's a shame. I think they should acquaint themselves with the Constitution before they make this statement, because it just exposes their ignorance. It shows them as people who are not fit to rule this country, because for you to be president of this country, you have to be au fait with the Constitution.
Yeah.
You see, Section 62 of the Constitution, this is subsection 3, says a person, while holding a public office.
Public office, yeah.
At the time of my conviction,
You were not.
I was an ordinary person struggling to fight against abuse of office, abuse of public office in this country. It is that in what informed me and my party executive to go out in the streets, and I was arrested.
Honorable
And
Darboe,
not only that,
yeah.
but Section 90 also of the Constitution. In fact, Section 62 says that, there's a provision that says that for you to be qualified as to contest for presidential elections, you must also be qualified to contest elections as a member of the National Assembly. And they have Section 90 of the Constitution that says that a person, disqualifications, a person who has been convicted of offense, carry life, sentence of death, sentenced to serve a prison for more than 6 months, is not qualified to contest as a for election as a National Assembly member unless you have been granted a free pardon. I was granted a free pardon by the government. So, because they do not know the Constitution and they do not bother themselves to acquaint themselves with the Constitution, that is why they go about exposing their ignorance, and let them continue to expose their ignorance. We will not respond to that. Let them go to the Supreme Court. I'm waiting for them there.
Whenever you talk about this, wow. Whenever you talk about this particular topic, though, it gets to you.
No, because
it hurts you. You can see it in you whenever you talk about your conviction.
What led to my conviction?
Yeah.
The reason, So each time I talk about this, I see solo standing in my imagination. I see Lamaron there. I see Koroma. The last time in the prison, the last time he was leaving, being taken to remand, came to my cells. Solo Koroma, the Dawambitala, I see Duanye, Alabembe Boldakara Konajandela. When I see that, I really get, and it is the thought of those, it's not my own conviction that hurts me. It is when it's mentioned, really, it brings memories. It brings memories of solo standing, of scenes that are indelible from my memory. That is it. But I hope that in the future, political leaders, those who aspire to be presidents of this country, I would advise them to acquaint themselves with the Constitution and orders of this country, so that when they speak, they do not expose their ignorance.
Would you work with civil service society groups? Now that we have the Constitutional Review Commission, we're going to have a new commission. That section that still has not been repealed, that section which says you need a permit when you go out to demonstrate, you are still challenging in the court. It was thrown out. Well, it's in the Constitution, 1997 Constitution. The Supreme Court was just interpreting the law. Are you going to work with the civil society group to make sure that section of the Constitution is removed, because itself, a lot of people say it's unconstitutional. That section itself is unconstitutional. Somebody used it to his advantage. Now that you are in this powerful position.
No, it is not the provisions of the Constitution that we think is unconstitutional. It is the Public Order Act.
The Public Order Act, that's what I'm saying.
The Public Order Act that we think is constitutional. And of course, the Supreme Court has ruled that it is constitutional. Although, let me quite frankly say that I do not agree with them.
Yes, good.
I certainly
you certainly doesn't agree with
I certainly do not agree with them.
Are you going to work with the...
No, because I do not agree with them, because what we are saying is not that there should not be any restrictions in the exercise of your freedom. What we are saying, that there should not be a denial.
There should not be a denial.
There should not be a denial. And that really you should be free to exercise those rights. The Supreme Court of Nigeria, has ruled against the Public Order Act in Nigeria. So has the Supreme Court of Ghana against the Public Order Act. And I think the Ghanaian, the way they put it is that, if you want to go out, give at least 14 days notice to the authorities, so that proper arrangements can be made for the police to be out there to prevent, any disorder in the streets, and so forth. Which I think is very. But I think, I want to think that certainly, even if you repeal the Public Order Act, at least those provisions of the Constitution of the Public Order Act that insists on the issue of permits, and incidentally, for my interpretation is that the Public Order Act is not asking for permits for the holding of rallies. It's use of public address system. For use of public address. But in any case, I also believe that if you repeal those provisions, there should be some way of controlling public protest, demonstrations. There should be a way of really controlling them, and you can do so maybe by improving on what the Ghanaians have put in place, giving notice and getting the police well informed. They know where you're going, and then they can really make arrangements so that they are there, and then so that nothing untoward happens.
We are almost done, Oli.
We've seen in the papers recently, I think it was sometime last week or yesterday maybe, that the UDP are challenging the chairmanship of Kuntawur, which the IEC have said what GDC won. So
well, the GDC allegedly won.
Yes, GDC won. But anyways, so now I'm just saying, if you challenge that all the way to the highest court and then they happen to revoke say UDP has now won, would that not create chaos in the country?
Why should it? After all,
it will. It definitely will.
After all, we went to the election so that we can win all the seats.
Yes.
But you won already six.
No, I say we went there
you
because
want to win all of them?
That is why we went there. That's why we put up a candidate.
Already started.
Look, it doesn't matter.
GDC.
Does it matter? No.
Or the militants.
Yes.
I mean,
you see, madam, let me tell you one thing. You know, let me tell you what it is. Really, let's be fair. I mean, if the IEC had not, in our view, erroneously announced GDC, if they had, as the winner, if they had announced it that time, would you be complaining that GDC should be left to have won the election? After all, we went there to win all the seats. That's why we sponsored the candidate. Where we didn't want to a seat, you've seen in the past, we never put up a candidate there. But wherever we put a candidate, we really want the seat. So if something goes amiss,
and you have evidence that you won the seat?
Honestly, we have written evidence. Wow. It's documented. It's documented. I think they are in the court today. I think some jurisdictional issues have been.
Okay.
Some jurisdictional.
So we cannot talk about
Some jurisdictional issues have been raised. I don't know how that jurisdictional issue will go. I don't know whether it will go in our favor or not. But whatever happens, we have clear-cut evidence that it was UDP
who
won. The 43 votes that GDC was alleged to have won was UDP's votes. If I know it was a mistake in the transposition of the figures. Yeah, of the figures. Wow. That was it. And nothing else. And that is why, because we knew that it was a mistake, that is why we do not accuse the returning officer of the IEC of doing something contrary to the laws and so forth. Yeah.
So we will follow that up. Thank you very much, Honorable. Okay. Final questions. They say, you're one step closer to the presidency. President Barrow will serve for 3 years, and then he will give you as the acting president for the next 2 years, and then Darboe's ambitions are fulfilled. All he wants is to be the president of the Gambia, and then he becomes president for 2 years, and Barrow comes back again and be the flag bearer of UDP. This is what political analysts are saying. Are you that close? Are you our next president in waiting?
I've told you that 2021 should be a matter to be discussed in 2021. Now we want to address the burning issues facing this nation.
Wow.
Now you say 3 years.
Yeah,
I have told you in this medium.
No, 3 years.
That I believe in law. I believe in the Constitution. The Constitution says you go to the polls and elect a president for 5 years. The Gambians have gone to the polls and elected a president to serve for 5 years. That president has a choice, of course, to serve only 1 year and resign. But my position is that nobody under this earth, under this sky, can tell Adama Barrow you must tell them because you have to serve 3 years.
So definitely 5 years.
That is my view. That is my view. That is what the Constitution provides for. But if he chooses to resign,
and Darboe becomes the president,
why should Darboe become the president?
VP takes over.
Why should Darboe but who says that Darboe is going to be VP in the next 5 months? No. That is what we may wish for. But who can give such a guarantee? These are assumptions, and I think they are terrible. They are terrible assumptions. Assuming that there is some conspiracy between Darboe and Barrow, and I think, that is unforgivable. I do not forgive anybody who assumes such a thing. I mean, we are gentlemen. We are working for the interests of this country. We are not concerned about power. We are satisfied, particularly I am satisfied that I can sit my grandchildren, some of whom, of course, are now old enough to know what is happening. Yeah? Tell them, you see, when your grandpa, Solo Sunday, was killed, I said, I wouldn't leave things lie low. You have to go out and make sure that his blood is properly atoned for, and that can only be done by liberating the Gambians. And of course, Solo's death and my imprisonment galvanized the Gambians to vote out. And for me, it's a great achievement. There's nothing that can be greater than that.
Yeah. A lot of people said you are a politician of the people. You're loved by your party militants, and you're accessible. You go to your house every single day. You have people out there. You go to your foreign affairs office. There's a lot of politicians out there. Now you're the vice presidency. Are we going to see these big convoys running, and then the ordinary people don't have access to you, and you don't come to our Kerr Fatou anymore? The people don't call you, because look at this, you brought us here. You should have been our Kerr Fatou. Like, especially the convoy, it irritates a lot of people.
No, you chose to come here.
Yeah, we chose to come here.
You chose to come here.
Yes.
I mean, I told the protocol, yes. What do they prefer? Do they want me to go and meet them, or they want to come here?
Definitely,
and you chose to come here.
Yeah.
So really.
But what about the convoys?
Now the convoy. This is a protocol matter that I found here. I'm looking at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking at it. No. I'm looking.
Accessibility. Party militants. Are you moving to the residency?
Which house?
The vice presidency?
I don't know.
You don't know?
I don't
know. Because Karaba Avenue is like a political bureau.
Yeah.
So people want to have that same access.
Yeah, I
know. Dabo politician mi alon ko mobe ketala suwo kono.
Bari yalo jefa namo Gambian ko la suwale. Gambian ko leta mo muti, Gambian ko le jelo.
Okay.
Gambian ko le la bung moti. You see, I mean, everything really. I think I'm leaving all these things. I'm just, as I've said, this is my third day. I'm leaving things to how the protocols and the security arrangement, how convenient it is for the security for me to move in 2 days pipeline, 2 days go to, and those type of things. And these are things that we have to consider. To consider. But one thing I can say is that I'll continue to be accessible, and my weekends, I'll spend with my people. Yes, because I'll spend with my people.
Thank you very much.
I'm not in the terrible situation of the president. Yes. He would want to do the same thing, but he cannot do it. He cannot do it, but I can do it very easily.
You can. It was great having him, as usual, talk to us openly and freely.
I just go back to where I started from by congratulating you, and the Gambian people are really watching, they're listening, and they have hopes. These hopes that some have really died down, some we still hold, and we believe that you would definitely, in your capacity as Vice President, we would see some changes being effected. And as you said, you're just here for 3 days, so we would definitely give you leeway for now and see what you will come up with once you sit properly. But just know that we are watching. And we are listening.
What's your final message?
Thank you very much. This is what I expected from the media, to have a watchful eye, to be critical, responsibly critical, of course, and challenge us, where you have doubts, and then probably those things, lead to a clearing of ambiguities, doubts, and so forth that might be lurking on the sides. And for me, just as I said to the president, as I said at my swearing in, the oath we took, just not a mere ritual, and it's an oath that we are going to live up to. We'll help the president. I, as his principal assistant, will stand by him, and we will all work together for the benefit of this country, yeah, for the benefit of our population. And we will help and stand by him so that he delivers. That's just like as I had told him when we came from prisons. The day I came from prison, I found him at my pipeline, and we hugged each other. We are virtually tearful, both of us. And I said to him, "You are the Moses of Gambia."
And he said,
"You were, the Israelites were tormented by the Pharaoh. And it was Moses who delivered them to the promised land. So he was our Moses, delivered us from the torments of that brutal dictator and took us to the new Gambia. That political journey is over. Now the other promised land is the land of prosperity that he'll be taking us to, and we will stand by him to ensure that we arrive at that land of prosperity."
and he said,
Well, yes, he said, and he said, "Well, you are our Nelson Mandela."
Wow.
Yes, yes,
Wow.
yes.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. This was a great interview, and we are definitely appreciative of the time you always take to give us interview whenever we ask for, and we really appreciate your time. And like I said, I just want you to be more accessible to us, and all of the media. All right, thank you.
No, we cannot run away from them.
Definitely. And then we also want to thank your protocol team. They were very accessible when we spoke to them. We want to thank them. We want to thank the entire team, Fadera, and the whole team around here for helping us, and of course our technical team, State of Mike. Good night to you all. See you next week.